This happened about 5 years ago. I was going through one of those, what am I doing with my life? Phases. Graduated college, broke, barely sleeping, and honestly just lonely. That's when I got a DM from someone I hadn't talked to since high school. Her name was Rachel. We were never close, but she always seemed super grounded normal. She said she'd gotten involved in something called the Silent Radiance Society. I know, sounds like some self-help Instagram cult, but she didn't pitch it like that. She said it changed her life, that it wasn't a business or a religion, just a transformational community for people seeking clarity. Normally, I'd ignore something like that, but something about the way she talked calm, confident, almost glowing. I got curious. She invited me to an intro night. I figured, why not? Worst case, I'd waste a couple hours. Turns out, that was the best case scenario. The seminar was held in this sleek building downtown. No signs on the outside, just an address and a time. Inside, it was dimly lit, smelled like incense, and everyone there was weirdly perfect. Like, imagine a room full of Instagram therapists and yoga influencers. Everyone was smiling. A little too much. The guy leading it was named Alden Gray, but they all called him the Lumen. He didn't yell or hype you up like some guru. He just talked slow and soft, staring right into your eyes like he already knew everything about you. I don't remember everything he said, but one line stuck with me. Most people live in cages they decorate. We're here to tear down the bars. Everyone around me nodded like it was the deepest thing they'd ever heard. I don't know what it was, maybe the atmosphere, maybe the headspace I was in, but I signed up for their starter course that night. They called it The Threshold. It cost $1,500. I didn't have that kind of money, but they offered a payment plan. I told myself it was an investment. That first course turned into 3 more. Next thing I knew, I was spending weekends at retreats, doing guided fasts, silence meditations, and something called Anchor Confession, where you sat in a group and admitted your deepest fears out loud. I didn't realize it at the time, but they were slowly tearing me down, piece by piece, breaking my sense of identity and rebuilding it in their image. They had their own vocabulary too. Veil breaking, basically exposing your trauma. Radiant alignment, obeying whatever the group leader told you. Signal selection, when Alden personally picked someone to move up. And when Alden picked me to join the Inner Radiance track, I felt honored. I didn't know what I was walking into. The advanced group met off-grid, no phones, no tech, no contact with the outside. We were taken by car to a giant house in the woods. You couldn't find it on GPS. Everyone wore white. We were blindfolded before going inside. It was dead, silent-like, being buried in snow. They told us this was the first step toward clarity. That weekend, we barely slept. We did fire rituals, confession circles, ego fasts, and long periods of total silence. They called it resetting the noise. On the 3rd night, they brought us into a candlelit room with symbols on the floor. Alden was waiting. He asked who was ready to shed the final skin. One guy stepped forward. His name was Caleb. They took off his robe, strapped him into a wooden chair, and branded him. Like actual branding. A glowing hot metal rod pressed into his chest. The symbol looked like a spiral sun, but later, I realized it was just stylized initials. AG for Alden Gray. Caleb screamed. We were told it was the pain of rebirth. After that, things got twisted. We were told to submit proofs of surrender each week. Personal confessions, photos, videos, things we'd never want leaked. They called it symbolic release. We called it blackmail, but only after we got out. They monitored everything. What we ate, who we talked to, how we dressed, and when people pushed back, they were isolated, reassigned, or just gone. That's when I noticed Lena, one of the older members, was acting off, shaky, eyes sunken. She pulled me aside during a ritual and whispered, "They're not helping us. They're owning us." She showed me scars on her back like whip marks, said it was part of her realignment. That night, she disappeared. They told us she transcended. I started packing. I told them I wasn't ready to continue, that I needed time. They smiled. Alden looked at me and said, "Fear is the final guardian of truth." They asked me to join one last ritual, said it would help me decide. I didn't even go back to my room. I went straight to the woods and ran. I had stashed an old phone in my sock bag and sent one word to my sister: run. She knew what it meant. She picked me up on a dirt road 2 miles from the estate. I didn't look back. For weeks, I thought they'd come for me. I deleted all my accounts, moved out of state. The worst part? They still had my secrets, my face, my voice. But nothing happened. Well, nothing outside me. Inside, I wasn't okay. I couldn't trust anyone, couldn't sleep. I kept hearing chanting in my dreams, kept waking up with this burning feeling where they almost branded me. A few months ago, I got a letter, no return address. Inside was a blank white card, and pressed into the paper was that same spiral symbol. I burned it. I don't know if the Silent Radiance Society still exists. Maybe they changed names. Maybe they're going by something trendier now. Or maybe they found someone new. Someone like I was. So, if someone ever tells you about a group that can unlock your highest self, just remember, not every light is meant to guide you. Some lights are traps. And the people holding them, they don't want to help you. They want to own you.
I don't usually talk about this night, mostly because people look at me like I'm crazy when I do. But I swear what I saw was real. It was around 2 a.m. when I was driving down an old rural back road. The highway was dead quiet. I took a shortcut to save time, but it ended up being a mistake. Everything around me was pitch black, except for what my headlights touched. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw something by the side of the road. At first, I thought it was a deer, but as I got closer, it was a figure, standing perfectly still, facing the woods. Before I could get a good look, it slipped into the trees. A few minutes later, I came around a bend and saw a field. In the middle of it stood a large circle of people, dozens of them, all wearing long, tattered hooded robes. None of them moved. They were all staring at something in the center of their circle. In the middle of the circle was a crude wooden structure, like a twisted altar. Something hung from it. I didn't realize it was a person until it moved. A figure, bound and slumped, head down. That's when an entire group turned their heads toward my car, in perfect unison. I floored the gas pedal, tearing down the road without looking back. Later, I asked an old local about it. He told me there's an ancient cult in those woods, worshiping something old, something that lives in the land. He warned me, never drive those roads at night. I grew up in a small town nestled between thick forests and rolling hills. Nothing much happened there, at least nothing you'd read about in the news. But everyone knew that certain roads weren't safe to drive down at night, and some parts of the forest were best left unexplored. When I was 23, I learned the hard way why. My best friend, Tyler, was always up for an adventure. One fall evening, he called me up and told me about an urban legend he'd heard about from his older cousin. There's a cult that meets in the woods past Silver Brook, he said, excitement dripping from his voice. They do some weird ritual stuff. My cousin says he saw them once when he was out there hunting. I scoffed. A cult? Seriously. I swear, dude. He said they wear these long robes, carry torches, and chant in some creepy language. He said they even leave symbols carved into trees. I still wasn't convinced, but the thrill in Tyler's voice made me curious. We decided to check it out the following Saturday. Just the two of us, along with Tyler's dog, Baxter, who we figured would be good protection if things got sketchy. The forest was about 20 minutes outside of town, near an old logging road that hadn't been used in decades. When we arrived, it was already dark. The trees loomed over us, their branches swaying gently in the wind. Let's just take a quick look, I said. If we don't see anything, we head back. Tyler agreed, and we set off down an overgrown path, our flashlights flickering as we walked. Baxter sniffed at the air, his ears twitching. After about 15 minutes, we found something. Carved into the bark of a massive oak tree was a strange symbol, a circle with jagged lines cutting through it like a star. Beneath it, in thick, crude letters, were the words, "We are always watching." A chill ran down my spine. Tyler whistled. Well, that's not creepy at all. I was about to suggest we turn back when Baxter suddenly let out a low growl. His fur bristled, and he stood rigid, staring into the darkness ahead. "What is it, boy?" Tyler asked. Then we heard it, soft chanting, a rhythmic, almost melodic whisper carried through the trees. Someone was out there. Tyler nudged me. "Come on, just a little closer." I hesitated, every instinct screaming at me to leave, but I followed him. As we crept forward, the chanting grew louder. We moved carefully, stepping over fallen branches and dried leaves to avoid making noise. Then, through the trees, we saw them, a group of people, maybe 20 or 30, stood in a perfect circle in a small clearing. They wore long, hooded robes, each holding a lit torch that flickered in the night air. In the center of their circle stood a stone altar, and on it lay something that made my stomach twist. A deer. Its throat had been cut, blood pooling beneath it. I turned to Tyler, ready to say, "Let's go," but his face was pale, his mouth slightly open. Then Baxter barked. The sound shattered the eerie silence, and every hooded figure turned in our direction. "Run!" I shouted, grabbing Tyler's arm. We bolted through the trees, branches slashing at our arms and legs. Behind us, I could hear footsteps, heavy, fast, relentless. The cult was chasing us. Baxter barked furiously, his paws pounding against the dirt as he ran beside us. Tyler tripped over a root and hit the ground hard. I stopped, yanking him up. "Come on, man." We kept running, lungs burning, until we finally saw the faint glow of our car's headlights through the trees. We sprinted toward it, fumbling with the keys as we reached the door. I threw it open, shoving Baxter inside before climbing in myself. Tyler barely had time to slam his door shut before I peeled out onto the road. As we sped away, I glanced in the rear-view mirror. The figures stood at the edge of the trees, watching us. Their torches flickered, their faces hidden beneath their hoods. But one of them raised a hand and pointed at us. We didn't stop driving until we were back in town. That night, neither of us slept. We didn't talk about what we saw, but we both knew we had witnessed something we weren't meant to see. The next morning, Tyler called me. "Check your door," he said, his voice shaky. Confused, I opened my front door. There, carved into the wood, was the same symbol from the forest. "We are always watching." I moved out of town a few months later. Tyler followed soon after. We never went back, and we never spoke about it again.
The biting cold of the night air hit me the very moment I stepped out from the comforting warmth of the cabin. The moon hung low, casting silvery shadows that danced eerily among the gnarled trees. It was supposed to be a getaway, a means of escaping the chaos of everyday life. Instead, as I glared into the darkness beyond our patch of light, suddenly the woods seemed to come alive, almost sentient, swallowing the sounds of my friend's laughter behind me. "Are you coming?" Matt yelled from the cabin, his voice seeming to reverberate off the deep forest. I hesitated, staring into thick brambles bordering our clearing, thick with tangled roots and interwoven branches that cast strange shapes in the moonlight. "Yeah, just give me a second," I replied, forcing a smile as I turned toward him. The plan was simple: hike deeper into the woods, do some stargazing, and then head back out into the warmth of the fire. I had done the particular hike a dozen times before, but this time felt different. The air was too still, too charged. Then, that unsettling feeling of being watched began to creep into the back of my mind. I rummaged through my backpack for a flashlight, feeling the chill crawl up my spine as my fingers grazed the cool metal of a small camping knife. As I made my way into the forest, the trees stood threateningly like sentinels, their branches clawing at the sky. The distant chirping of crickets abruptly ceased as I ventured further away from the cabin. Probably just my imagination, I thought, shaking my head to dispel the ghostly chill which had taken residence in my chest. After a 10-minute walk, I emerged into an open area that was at the same time enchanting and forbidding, open sky full of stars. The kind of place where ancient tales of horror are whispered by leaves. I switched my flashlight on and its ray cut through the darkness like a knife. My heart was beating fast while I began to circle around. The woods seemed to breathe, shifting in unnatural ways that the wind whipped by with little greeting whispers, instead coming out as sharp hisses. I sat on a log lying on the ground, trying to steady my nerves. It was quiet now, too quiet. The laughter from the cabin had muted into a muffled memory, and I desperately wanted to go back inside, but my legs seemed stuck to the spot. I had an undeniable feeling that something was standing beyond the trees, just waiting for that opportune time to pounce. Just as I was getting up, I heard it something soft rustling in a generally leftward direction, deeper in the woods. "Matt, is that you?" I called, trying to keep the quaver out of my voice. Silence fell, heavy and malarial, settling around me like a tourniquet. I could feel the blood draining from my face. Then it came again, this time louder. A slow, purposeful crushing of leaves. The shadows lengthened further as I turned my flashlight in that direction, and my heart violently thudded against my rib cage as the light fluttered erratically, casting wild shadows across the trees. I rummaged my surroundings. Just the wind. I muttered to myself, clenching the knife tightly in my sweat-soaked palms. But the sounds grew louder, clearer like footsteps. I finally summoned the courage to rise to my feet. Something was after me, and I knew it, an instinctive terror tearing at my sanity. I cast the light to my left once more, the beam buckled, showing only swirling darkness defined by the trees. I was suddenly very conscious of how far into the woods I had gone. "Seriously, guys, this isn't funny." I yelled again, hoping for just about any sound in response. Slowly, I began to back up, my flashlight held firm. But nobody laughed, nobody answered. All I could hear was the ragged sound of my breathing and crunching that sounded like it moved with me. Just about the time I thought I was back in safely, a shape broke the tree line beside me. My heart arrested. An animal? A trick of the light? Then it was there, a giant form, considering and silent, watching me from the cover of darkness. I could hardly see its features, but its eyes. They glowed unnaturally, fixed on me as if weighing me. I stumbled back in alarm, falling to the ground. The flashlight flickered once more and then went out, plunging me into the dark. I scrambled, afraid even the slightest movement would reveal a hiding self. I took a deep, shaky breath, listening intently as the creature stepped closer, moving with deliberation, unnatural silence. Just when I thought I could hear my pulse pounding in my ears, the silence shattered with a blood-curdling scream. My friends had come looking for me. The terror that I felt turned to anger mixed with fear. I had put them in danger too. I sprang to my feet, not caring if the creature was close. I ran in the direction of their voices, shouting out my friends' names, and now the woods were some sort of maze filled with fear and panic. Finally, I found them, and then relief washed over me until I turned back for that last look. There was nothing but silent trees. No glowing eyes, no sound, just that residual dread. Something in that suffocating dark would always be watching. It wasn't until we were safely back in the cabin that I realized the silence in my heart hadn't lifted. Over the next several days, whispers went around amongst them as to what I had seen and heard. But I said nothing then and nothing afterwards either. I would not have dared utter the profundity of that terror, from some creature lurking just beyond the shadows. Even now, in the safety of everyday existence, I shun the woods. The thought of entering that isolation, knowing something akin to that could still be out there, waiting, sensing for the moment the darkness would take me again, well, those are terrors I don't care to endure. And each time the trees sway, whispering sweet nothings in the cool night breeze, I can almost hear that slow, deliberate crunching in the distance, waiting patiently for my return. "I don't think we're alone out here." Those were the last words my friend Max whispered to me before we both froze, our breaths hanging like pale ghosts in the chilly forest air. The campfire crackled weakly, the flames casting jittery shadows against the towering pines surrounding our campsite. We had been out here for 2 nights already, miles away from the nearest road, relishing the isolation. But now, that same isolation felt like a noose tightening around our necks. It all started earlier that day. Max and I, along with his younger sister Leah, had decided to hike further into the forest to explore an area we'd marked on our map, a clearing nestled between 2 ridges. The trail was faint, overgrown in parts, and the deeper we went, the quieter the forest became. Even the usual chatter of birds and insects seemed muted, as if something unseen had pressed a finger to its lips. The clearing was beautiful, though, wildflowers scattered across the grass, framed by jagged rocks. We set up camp and spent the afternoon cooking and joking around. But by dusk, a subtle unease had crept into my mind. Leah had wandered off to gather firewood and returned looking pale, her arms loaded with sticks. "There's something weird out here," she muttered, dropping the wood at my feet. "What do you mean?" I asked. She hesitated. "It's like I'm being watched. Every time I turned around, I thought I saw someone in the trees. But when I looked, nothing was there." Max laughed it off. "You've been watching too many horror movies." But Leah's unease stuck with me. As night fell, we circled the fire, telling stories and roasting marshmallows. The wind had picked up, rustling the branches overhead. It was during one of those lulls, between laughter and crackling wood, that I heard it, a faint snap, like a branch breaking underfoot. I turned sharply, peering into the dark forest beyond the firelight. "Did you hear that?" Max shrugged. "It's probably just an animal." "Too big for an animal," Leah whispered, inching closer to the fire. I grabbed my flashlight and shone it into the woods. Nothing. Just endless trees, their shadows stretching and twisting like reaching fingers. "Relax," Max said. "We're in the middle of nowhere. There's no one else out here." But he was wrong. Then, from the edge of the clearing, I saw it, a faint silhouette standing between the trees. It was tall, motionless, almost blending with the shadows. My throat tightened as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. "Who's there?" I shouted. No response. Max took a step forward, but I grabbed his arm. "Don't." The figure shifted slightly, as if swaying. And then, with a sudden, unnatural speed, it moved out of sight. "What the hell was that?" Max whispered, his voice barely audible. "We're leaving," I said, my heart hammering. "First thing in the morning." But morning felt like an eternity away. Back in my tent, I clutched a knife I brought for cooking and kept my ears trained for any sound. I must have dozed off at some point because the next thing I knew, I woke to Leah screaming. Later, as we lay in our tents, I found myself unable to sleep. Every rustle of leaves, every whisper of wind, set my nerves on edge. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. It was around midnight when I heard it again, a steady, deliberate crunch of footsteps circling the campsite. My blood turned cold. "Max," I hissed, poking my head out of my tent. He was already sitting up, his face pale. "You hear it too?" We grabbed our flashlights and stepped out, careful not to wake Leah. The fire had died down to embers, and the forest was pitch black. We scanned the perimeter, the beams of our flashlights cutting through the darkness. "Hello?" Max called out, his voice trembling. Silence. I bolted out of the tent, flashlight in hand. Leah was standing by the fire pit, her face streaked with tears. "It was in my tent," she sobbed. I woke up, and there was someone crouching there. Max and I exchanged horrified looks. "Pack up," I said, my voice firm despite the fear clawing at my chest. "We're leaving now." We worked quickly, breaking down the tents and shoving our gear into backpacks. All the while, I felt that presence, like unseen eyes boring into my back. The hike back to the car was brutal. The trail we had followed so easily before now seemed foreign and treacherous. The trees pressed in from all sides, and every so often, we heard that same deliberate crunch of footsteps, always just out of sight. At one point, Leah stumbled, and Max bent to help her. That's when I saw it again, about 50 yards away, half hidden behind a tree. The same figure, its head tilted as if observing us. "Ron," I whispered, grabbing Leah's arm. "Ron!" We bolted, the path blurring as adrenaline took over. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see if it was following us. When we finally reached the car, we piled in and sped off, not stopping until we were miles away. Only then did I let myself breathe. Even now, I can't explain what we saw out there. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't a person, at least not any kind of person I've ever seen. Sometimes, I'll wake up in the middle of the night, convinced I hear footsteps outside my window. And I'll wonder if we left it behind in the woods, or if it followed us home.